I still remember the exact moment the world tilted. Not a dramatic crash, no. It was a subtle, insidious shift, like a fault line opening beneath my feet, slowly, silently until the ground gave way. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, sun streaming through the panoramic windows of the office I'd poured my heart and soul into building. I was reviewing the Q3 financials, a routine task that had for years brought a quiet satisfaction. But that day, the numbers didn't sing. They screamed. A discrepancy, small at first, in the supplier payments. A flicker of unease. Then, a deeper dive. And the slow, terrifying realization that Marcus, my partner, my friend, the man I trusted with my life and my dream, was stealing our company blind. The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from the sheer force of the betrayal washing over me. It felt like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me winded and aching. How could this be? Marcus Thorne. His name tasted like ash in my mouth. We had built Apex Innovations from nothing. 7 years of late nights, skipped holidays, shared anxieties, and triumphant breakthroughs. We started in a cramped co-working space, fueled by cheap coffee and an unshakable belief in our software. I was the tech brains, the visionary behind the product. He was the charismatic frontman, the business development guru who could charm anyone, close any deal. We were the perfect team, complementary halves of a whole, or so I believed. His infectious optimism, his grand visions, they mirrored my own. We envisioned a future where Apex wasn't just a successful company, but a force for good, a testament to what two passionate individuals could achieve. We swore fidelity to that dream, to each other. It was more than a business. It was our baby. And now, I was looking at evidence that he was systematically dismantling it, brick by painstaking brick, and lining his own pockets with the rubble. The first few days after that discovery were a blur of numb disbelief. I continued to go through the motions, nodding in our morning meetings, even sharing a laugh over a client anecdote, all while a cold, heavy stone settled in my chest. Every interaction with Marcus became a performance, a grotesque charade. I'd watch him, really watch him, searching for tells, for a flicker of guilt in his eyes, a tremor in his voice. But there was nothing, just the same confident smile, the same easy charm, the same air of a man completely at peace with himself. It chilled me to the bone. He wasn't just stealing, he was living a lie so flawlessly it made me question my own sanity. Was I imagining things? Was I overreacting to a simple accounting error? No. The evidence, once I started digging, mounted like a tidal wave. Phantom invoices, payments to unknown entities with vague descriptions, dubious consulting fees to shell companies registered in offshore havens, all linked back to P.O. boxes and nominees he controlled. He wasn't just skimming, he was orchestrating a sophisticated, multi-layered embezzlement scheme. Our company had grown rapidly, hitting multi-million-dollar revenues within 5 years. We'd gone from 2 employees to nearly 50. We'd secured major contracts, developed groundbreaking AI-driven analytics software. My focus had always been on innovation, on the product, on our team. I trusted Marcus implicitly with the financial side. He had a finance background, an MBA from a prestigious university. He handled the books, the investments, the legal compliance. I'd occasionally glance at reports, but honestly, I was too absorbed in my own domain to scrutinize every line item. I'd implicitly trusted his integrity, his loyalty to our shared dream. This blind trust was now my biggest regret, a gaping wound in my soul. I remember one particular instance, about 2 years prior. We were discussing expanding into the European market. Marcus was adamant that we needed a specific consultancy firm to navigate the complexities, despite our in-house legal team advising against it due to their exorbitant fees and questionable reputation. I pushed back, saying we should explore cheaper, more established alternatives. He became unusually agitated, almost angry, which was unlike his usual calm demeanor. He pulled out charts and figures, talking about their unique expertise and unrivaled connections. He convinced me, ultimately, by appealing to our shared ambition. Evelyn, this is about getting us to the next level, no matter the cost. We can't afford to be penny-wise and pound-foolish when our future is at stake. I conceded. Now, looking back, I realized that consultancy firm was almost certainly one of his conduits for siphoning money. He wasn't talking about our future, he was talking about his future, built on my hard work and our company's success. The weight of suspicion grew unbearable. I couldn't sleep. My appetite vanished. Every conversation, every email, every casual interaction with Marcus was filtered through a new, horrifying lens. He'd occasionally ask me about the status of certain R&D projects, seemingly interested. Now, I wondered if he was gauging their value, calculating how much more he could extract before the well ran dry, or before I caught on. The thought was sickening. I felt like I was living inside a thriller, but the monster was someone I once called family. I couldn't risk confronting him without undeniable proof. His charm was his weapon. He could talk his way out of anything, twist any narrative. I knew he would try to gaslight me, to turn the tables, to make me look irrational or incompetent. I needed facts. Cold, hard, incontrovertible facts. My first step was clandestine. I subtly changed the passwords to some of our internal financial software, citing a routine security audit. I started saving all our shared financial documents, reports, and communications to an external, encrypted drive. It felt sordid, like I was betraying him, even as I knew he had already betrayed me tenfold. The irony was a bitter taste. Then, I reached out to a former university professor, someone I respected deeply in forensic accounting. I didn't tell her the full story, just that I had concerns about some irregularities in a company I was involved with and needed a discreet, thorough analysis. She agreed to take a look, under strict confidentiality agreements. This was the turning point. This was when the suspicion hardened into resolve. This was when the legal war began, though Marcus had no idea he was already on the battlefield. The process with the forensic accountant, Dr. Anya Sharma, was painstaking. I spent weeks compiling financial records, cross-referencing bank statements, purchase orders, contracts. I worked late into the night, often after Marcus had left, poring over spreadsheets, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and furious determination. Each new piece of evidence Dr. Sharma uncovered was like a shard of glass in my heart. She found multiple offshore accounts, meticulously structured to obfuscate the true beneficiary. She found inflated invoices from suppliers, with the difference diverted to Marcus's shell companies. She found instances where company funds were used to pay for his personal luxury expenses, a new yacht, renovations on his sprawling suburban home, even his children's private school fees. The scale of it was breathtaking. He wasn't just stealing. He was systematically looting our company, using it as his personal ATM, all while maintaining the facade of a dedicated visionary leader. The emotional toll was immense. I'd sit alone in my office, staring at the glowing screen, feeling a profound sense of loss. It wasn't just the money, though, that was significant. It was the loss of a dream, the shattering of a partnership I believed was built on rock-solid trust. It was the feeling of being utterly foolish, naive, for not seeing it sooner. Every compliment Marcus had ever given me, every shared toast to our success, every pat on the back, they all now felt like calculated manipulations. Was our friendship even real? Or was I just a convenient conduit for his ambition, a brilliant mind he could exploit to build his personal fortune? The thought stung worse than any financial loss. I was betrayed, not just professionally, but personally, to the deepest core of my being. One evening, Marcus caught me working late. He leaned against my doorframe, a casual smile on his face. "Still burning the midnight oil, Evelyn? That's why we're so successful, right? Our dedication." He chuckled, completely oblivious to the internal inferno raging within me. "Anything exciting brewing in the R&D labs?" I forced a smile, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just tying up some loose ends for the Q4 projections? Trying to optimize some resource allocation?" He nodded, satisfied. "Good, good. Keep up the excellent work. We're on the cusp of something truly monumental, you and I." My stomach churned. He actually said, "you and I." He still used "we." The sheer audacity, the brazenness of his deception was almost admirable in its cold, calculating efficiency. But it only fueled my resolve. I would not let him get away with this. I would expose the truth, no matter how painful. Dr. Sharma's final report was over 100 pages long, meticulously detailing every fraudulent transaction, every shell company, every hidden account, linking them irrevocably to Marcus. It was an indictment, a damning chronicle of deceit. With that in hand, I finally sought legal counsel. I walked into the offices of a prominent law firm specializing in corporate fraud, my heart heavy, but my mind clear. I laid out the facts, presented Dr. Sharma's report, and watched as the senior partner, a formidable woman named Eleanor Vance, read through it, her expression hardening with each page. When she finished, she looked at me, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "Ms. Reed," she said, her voice low and steady, "this is extensive, and it's serious. You've got a very strong case. Mr. Thorne has committed significant financial crimes." Eleanor explained the process. "We would file a civil suit for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and theft. Depending on the scale, criminal charges might also be pursued, but the civil route was often faster for recovering assets and dismantling the scheme. It would be a long, arduous battle," she warned. "Marcus would fight dirty. He would try to discredit me, to smear my name, to paint me as unhinged or bitter. He would deny everything. He would use every legal loophole, every delay tactic." "Are you prepared for war, Evelyn?" she asked, her gaze piercing. I met her eyes, my voice firm. "I built this company from the ground up, Eleanor. I will not let him destroy it, or me. I'm prepared for anything." The day the legal papers were served to Marcus was one of the most terrifying and exhilarating of my life. I wasn't there, of course, but Eleanor's team coordinated it for maximum impact. It was a Friday afternoon, just as he was leaving the office. He'd been handed a thick stack of documents by a process server right outside the building. I imagined his initial confusion, then the dawning horror as he realized what they were. I pictured his confident smirk faltering, his charismatic mask cracking. The thought brought a grim satisfaction. The silence in the office the following Monday was deafening. He didn't come in. His assistant vaguely mentioned a personal emergency, but the whispers had already started. The truth, even in its nascent form, was beginning to seep out. The initial response from Marcus, through his own high-powered legal team, was exactly as Eleanor predicted: aggressive denial, counter-accusations, and attempts to paint me as an emotional, vindictive partner. His lawyers claimed I was suffering from stress-induced delusions, that I was trying to seize control of the company, that the discrepancies were merely accounting errors, and that Dr. Sharma's report was fabricated. It was a classic move, and it infuriated me. He was not just stealing our company, he was trying to steal my reputation, my sanity, my very credibility. But I had Eleanor, and I had the facts, and those facts, unlike Marcus's lies, would not bend. The legal process was a slow, agonizing grind. Discovery, depositions, motions, counter-motions. Every week brought new demands, new challenges. Marcus's lawyers fought tooth and nail, trying to block access to documents, delaying production, even attempting to have the case dismissed. But Eleanor was relentless. She anticipated their moves, counterattacked with precision. We uncovered more layers of Marcus's scheme during this phase. It wasn't just our company he was siphoning from. He had been involved in similar, albeit smaller schemes in previous ventures, which were unearthed by a private investigator Eleanor had hired. This demonstrated a pattern, a premeditated criminal intent, not just a momentary lapse of judgment. This revelation was a new twist, confirming his deeply ingrained manipulative nature. He wasn't just a partner who went astray. He was a con artist who had found his biggest mark in me. The impact on the company was immediate and severe. Clients grew nervous, employees were scared, confused. Rumors ran rampant. Some employees, particularly those Marcus had handpicked and promoted, showed unwavering loyalty to him, believing his version of events, that I was the problem. This was another painful revelation. I realized how deeply he had cultivated a personal following within the company, creating a separate power structure, a small kingdom within our shared enterprise. It was a further testament to his manipulative prowess. He had built a fortress of loyalty and misinformation to protect himself, anticipating a challenge like this. I remember one tense board meeting, held virtually, where Marcus appeared, looking surprisingly calm despite the storm raging around him. He spoke with his usual charisma, denying everything, portraying himself as the victim of a malicious and unfounded attack by a disgruntled partner. He even managed to garner sympathy from a few of the newer board members, painting me as erratic and emotional. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. My blood ran cold watching him. He truly believed his own lies, or at least he was so good at performing them that he convinced others. This moment deepened my understanding of his ruthlessness. He wasn't just a thief. He was a predator, willing to destroy anyone who stood in his way, including the company we supposedly co-founded and the people who worked for us. But Eleanor and her team had anticipated this. We strategically leaked specific, carefully redacted portions of Dr. Sharma's report to key board members and investors through anonymous channels, just enough to sow seeds of doubt. We didn't accuse, we just presented information for their consideration. It was a delicate dance, but it worked. The initial sympathy for Marcus began to wane as the financial community, always wary of fraud, started asking harder questions. One of our major investors, a seasoned venture capitalist named Richard Harding, who had initially been swayed by Marcus's charm, approached me discreetly. He had his own forensic team look at the anonymous report and then compared it with the company's official statements that Marcus had been providing. The numbers simply didn't align. This was a crucial turning point. Richard, once a Marcus ally, now became a key, albeit quiet, supporter of my position. The legal battle wasn't just about documents and courtroom drama, it was a psychological war. Marcus started calling me, leaving voicemails, sending emails that swung between cajoling and threatening. He'd start with, "Evelyn, my dear friend, this is getting out of hand, we need to talk, settle this like adults." Then, if I didn't respond, the tone would shift. "You're ruining everything we built, Evelyn. Think about the consequences. You're going to destroy Apex, and you'll have nothing left." He even suggested that I was suffering from burnout and offered to buy out my share for my own good. It was a desperate attempt to manipulate me, to make me doubt my resolve. But after seeing the full extent of his betrayal, his words held no sway. They just sounded hollow, the dying roar of a cornered beast. His attempts to intimidate me only reinforced my conviction that I was doing the right thing. Then came the discovery phase where Marcus was forced to provide documents and sit for a deposition. This was where his carefully constructed facade truly began to crumble. Under Eleanor's relentless questioning, his answers grew evasive, contradictory. He would stutter, wipe his brow, shift uncomfortably. He still denied everything, but his denials sounded increasingly desperate, unconvincing. He couldn't explain the missing funds, the offshore accounts, the shell companies, without getting tangled in his own web of lies. He tried to blame junior staff, even tried to imply that I might have been responsible for some of the mismanagement. But our evidence was too strong, too meticulously compiled. We had emails, signed documents, bank transfers. We had a paper trail that led directly to him. The transformation from confident CEO to sweating, cornered liar was a chilling spectacle. This was the moment I saw him truly exposed, not just as a thief, but as a coward. The most damning revelation during discovery came from an unexpected source: his estranged personal assistant, a young woman named Chloe. She had worked for Marcus for years, seen everything. She initially refused to cooperate, fearing repercussions. But after her own conscience, and perhaps a subtle nudge from Eleanor's team outlining the potential legal liabilities of complicity, Chloe finally came forward. She provided internal memos, personal notes, and even recorded conversations that Marcus had thought were private. She revealed how he meticulously planned the schemes, how he used her to set up fake meetings, to forge signatures, to handle sensitive financial transfers. This was the twist that shattered Marcus's defense. Chloe's testimony was a goldmine of insider information, revealing the intricate details of his criminal enterprise, how he forced her to participate, and how he threatened her family if she didn't comply. It showed the depths of his depravity and how many lives he was willing to ruin for his greed. She herself was a victim, coerced into complicity, and her coming forward was an act of immense bravery. This wasn't just about financial fraud anymore. It was about coercion, abuse of power, and psychological manipulation. With Chloe's testimony and the mountain of irrefutable evidence, Marcus's legal team knew they were beaten. The judge, having reviewed the pre-trial motions and evidence, made it clear that he was leaning heavily in our favor, implying that a jury would likely do the same and potentially impose punitive damages. Facing certain defeat in court, and the very real possibility of criminal charges from the authorities who had now taken an interest in the case, Marcus's lawyers approached us with a settlement offer. It was a paltry sum, an insult given the years of theft and damage. Eleanor laughed them out of the room. "We're not interested in scraps," she told me. "We're interested in justice and recovering every penny." The pressure on Marcus intensified. Our major investors, led by Richard Harding, held an emergency board meeting. With the irrefutable evidence laid out and the prospect of the company's reputation being dragged through a very public, very ugly trial, they voted overwhelmingly to strip Marcus of all his titles and responsibilities, suspending him indefinitely. The board, realizing the depth of the betrayal, also initiated their own internal investigation, which quickly corroborated our findings. They issued a public statement, carefully worded, but unmistakably condemning the serious financial irregularities and breaches of trust. This was the public exposure, the reputational blow Marcus had dreaded. His carefully cultivated image as a brilliant ethical leader was in tatters. The public reaction was brutal. Social media lit up with articles detailing the allegations, the evidence, the betrayal. Former colleagues and business associates came forward with their own stories of Marcus's questionable dealings, painting a picture of a man who had always skirted the edges of legality, driven by insatiable greed. The charismatic Marcus Thorne was now widely seen as a con artist, a snake oil salesman. His personal brand, once his most valuable asset, was utterly destroyed. It wasn't the kind of revenge I had explicitly sought, but it was a consequence he had brought upon himself, a direct result of his actions being exposed. Karma, in its digital age manifestation, was swift and unforgiving. The full weight of the situation seemed to finally crush Marcus. Weeks later, after more negotiation, his legal team came back with a significantly improved offer. It included full restitution of all stolen funds, a substantial penalty payment to the company for damages, and the forced sale of all his shares in Apex Innovations back to the company at a heavily discounted rate. He was also barred from holding any executive position in any publicly traded company for 10 years, effectively ending his career in corporate leadership. The agreement was comprehensive, designed to strip him of everything he had gained through deceit and to prevent him from ever doing this again. It was a complete legal victory, a total dismantling of his empire of lies. The signing of the settlement papers was a surreal experience. I sat across from Marcus in a sterile conference room, surrounded by lawyers. He looked hollow, gaunt, a shadow of the man he once was. His swagger was gone, replaced by a defeated slump. He avoided my gaze, staring instead at the documents, his hand trembling as he signed. There was no apology, no remorse in his eyes, just a raw, incandescent hatred. I saw it clearly in that moment. He hated me, not for exposing him, but for winning. But that hatred meant nothing to me. I felt no triumph in his suffering, only a quiet, resolute satisfaction that justice had been served. The years of betrayal, the emotional damage, the financial theft, they were finally acknowledged, finally brought to light, and finally, unequivocally, punished. After the settlement was finalized, I called a company-wide meeting. The atmosphere was thick with apprehension. I stood before my employees, the ones who had stayed, the ones who had believed in Apex, in me. I spoke openly, honestly, about the betrayal, about the legal battle, about the difficult truths we had uncovered. I didn't mince words about Marcus, but I focused more on the future, on rebuilding trust, on reinforcing our ethical foundations. I assured them that Apex would not only survive but thrive, stronger and more transparent than ever before. There were tears, nods of understanding, and finally, a sense of relief washing over the room. The truth, painful as it was, had a cleansing effect. Rebuilding Apex was a monumental task. The company had been shaken to its core. But with Marcus gone, a new energy emerged. We implemented stricter financial oversight, put in place new checks and balances, and fostered a culture of absolute transparency. I took a more active role in the financial management, ensuring no one person could ever wield such unchecked power again. It was a painful lesson, but one that made us stronger, more resilient. We recovered much of the stolen funds, though some were lost forever in the offshore labyrinth. The company, battered but not broken, slowly began to regain its footing, its reputation, its momentum. My own journey was one of healing. The anger, the shock, the profound sense of personal betrayal, they lingered. But with Marcus's public exposure and legal consequences, a heavy burden was lifted. I learned a brutal lesson about trust, about vigilance, about the darker side of human nature. But I also learned about my own resilience, my own strength, my unwavering commitment to integrity. I wasn't the same naive, trusting person who had entered into that partnership. I was harder, wiser, more discerning. But I also emerged with a renewed sense of purpose, a fierce determination to build a company that was not just successful, but ethical. A place where people could trust each other, where dreams could flourish without being preyed upon. Marcus, I heard, lost everything. His assets were seized to cover the restitution and penalties. His lavish lifestyle collapsed. His social circles, once so charmed by his persona, evaporated. His family was left to contend with the fallout of his deceit, his children facing the consequences of their father's public disgrace. He faced criminal investigations, and I heard whispers of future charges. The legal war I had initiated had not only stripped him of his ill-gotten gains, but had effectively ended his career and destroyed his standing in the world. He got what he deserved. The consequences were real, tangible, and far-reaching. Sometimes late at night, I still think about that first moment of discovery, the cold dread that washed over me. But now it's tempered by the knowledge that I didn't let it consume me. I fought back. I stood up for myself, for my company, for our shared dream. The scars of betrayal remain, a permanent reminder of a painful past, but they are also a testament to survival, to fighting for justice, and to finding strength in the darkest of times. The truth was exposed. Karma found its way. And I, Evelyn Reed, finally found my peace, stronger and more resolute than ever before. This wasn't just a story of betrayal and revenge. It was a story of reclaiming what was lost and rebuilding it, brick by painful, triumphant brick.